Hello and welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar, How Skills Assessment Powers High Impact Learning at Scale. Over the next hour or so, we're really going to take this title apart piece by piece and talk about each piece and then talk about them together from high impact learning at scale, and then what's the role of skills assessment in getting us there. As we ease in, a couple of housekeeping notes for all of you. First of all, as an attendee, you're going to be in listen only mode. So if you have a question or a comment, please go ahead and drop that in the question pane on the go-to panel as we go through this. And then at the end, we're going to carve out some time to take a look at those questions and answer as many as we can live. And those that we don't get to, we can answer after the live portion. And following the webinar, we'll be pushing out a survey, which really helps us stay targeted, and relevant and interesting for all of you. So we appreciate your feedback there. And also, you'll receive a copy of the slides and the recording of this, which we'll send to you via email after the conversation. So as we get into it, I just want to again, welcome you all and thank you for carving out an hour to spend with us. We really value you being here. I was taking a look at the attendee roster before we jumped on here, and it's just an incredible diversity of roles and perspectives today gathered in the virtual audience, so to speak, from executive leaders of businesses to learning designers and instructional designers, and learning scientists, customer learning teams, but also marketing leaders, enablement leaders, operations leaders, and a bunch of internal L&D teams as well. So I think really a richness of kind of specialties and perspectives today, and we welcome you all. For those of you who haven't worked with Thought Industries or Bongo before, who together we're presenting this webinar, I'll start with Thought Industries, which is a learning technology company. And since our founding in 2013, we've really been singularly focused on supporting businesses and organizations to build scalable education offerings for external and internal audiences. So for our staff, for customers, for extended enterprise, for membership associations, and so on and so forth. That's our focus. All of our technology is designed to fit hand in glove with the needs that learning businesses have as they grow and they scale. And we work with organizations across a diversity of industries and sectors. You can see just a very small representative sample of some of the kinds of companies we work with, from professional training and learning companies like BrainAware, for who we have a special guest joining from BrainAware today in a little bit, who I'll introduce, and Challenger, the Linux Foundation, to large global manufacturing companies like Caterpillar and Cisco, to kind of preeminent software companies like ZoomInfo and beyond. And if you've been connected to us for a while, this is really a part of our ongoing community programming series for customer learning teams and leaders, learning designers, and all of you who are on the call today. Because our mission at its core, I think about it in terms of three concentric circles. At the center is our technology, is our platform, which we use to power and grow customer learning offerings and deliver business impact. But coming out of that and working with hundreds of organizations doing that work, a big part of what we do is consolidate strategy and provide strategic guidance that we gather from working with innovators and experts across industries and across organizations. And then finally, really trying to gather and be a hub of community for all of you to have opportunities to share with one another, connect with one another, learn from one another. And that's really where today comes from. Today's discussion specifically will be divided into a couple of distinct parts. So we're going to start big picture at the level of organizational strategy for a few minutes, and then get progressively more tactical as we go on. So first, I want to introduce Thought Industries' maturity model for customer learning, which is a tool that we at Thought Industries use to guide our partners and our customers towards growing and evolving their businesses and their learning programs to deliver more and more impact. And then I want to zoom in on one key component of that model, which underpins growth, which is around learning design that delivers behavior change, and how do you measure that behavior change. We'll talk about that. I'm going to turn it over to one of my colleagues to take an expert's eye view into how that kind of learning and assessment can be designed, it can be deployed. And then finally, we're going to do a deep dive into the capabilities and tools that Bongo provides for creating and deploying powerful video learning and assessments. And at the very end, we're going to hold some time for question and answer from all of you. And then there'll be a bonus in appreciation for your time today. So let me kick it off with some introductions of the three of us that are on the panel today. And I'll start with myself, Paul Marylees, Senior Director of Learning Strategies here at Thought Industries. And so I'm responsible for our research program and for centralizing and making concrete the learning that we glean from working with hundreds of organizations and packaging that up and sharing that back. But before that, I spent about 15 years at the advisory board company in United Health Group, designing and deploying learning programs in healthcare for nurse leaders, for physician leaders, for administrators and senior executives, with a real focus on blended and online programs that drive behavior change. So today's topic is really special and has a sweet spot in my heart. But with that, I'll pass it over to you, Emily, to introduce yourself, and then you, Britt.
Thanks so much, Paul. Hi, everybody. It's so great to be here today. I'm Emily McClellan, and I'm from Bongo. And at Bongo, we primarily work with partners like Thought Industries. So we believe that we at Bongo are more powerful when we partner with really amazing learning management systems. And so I'm excited to show you how we are embedded into Thought Industries today. My entire career has been spent in education, whether it be higher education or corporate education. And so I've learned a lot along the way, and I've seen how learning has evolved and grown over the years. And so I'm really, really excited to be working with Thought Industries, working with Britt, and speaking with you all today.
And hi, I'm Britt Andriata. I'm the CEO of Brain Aware Training, but before that, I was the Chief Learning Officer at lynda.com, which is now LinkedIn Learning. And some of you may know me from my research. I've written 3 books now on the brain science of success, and one of them is all about how the brain learns, wired to grow. So I'll be sharing some of the best practices from that and later in our conversation today.
Well, thanks, Emily, and thanks, Britt, for joining, and really looking forward to the conversation. As we get into it, and just to set the table with a framework for discussion, I do want to introduce the Thought Industries maturity model, which is an artifact that we created from our work with all of the companies and organizations that we partner with. So last year, we spent a couple of months going through a research process that was designed to answer the question of what does truly high impact customer learning, external facing learning look like? What advantages does it deliver to organizations, and how do you get there? So what does the pathway look to building out a truly best-in-class customer learning program? And what are the pitfalls along the way? And what are some of the best practices for mitigating and overcoming those pitfalls? And we conducted this research through in-depth surveys of teams at 50 organizations, a little over 50 organizations, and we really sought to understand what are their specific challenges, what are the obstacles that they're facing and where are they, looked at their kind of operational dashboards to understand what's the business impact, and at high impact part of the title, what does that look like specifically by the numbers for you, and how did you deliver that? And then we stepped back after the interview process and put together our model, which maps out 5 stages that, wow, I have some amazing animation. So it maps out 5 stages that we see organizations and programs go through as they grow and evolve. And so kind of going from left to right, we see organizations starting in a world of primarily large training, whether it is a P&L with a large team of trainers, or whether it is more ad hoc with smaller teams. A lot of the beginning is sort of mastering that live training motion and starting to figure out how do we divide up between standardization and customization for our audiences, and how do we start to digitize the core offerings that probably are more 101 level, that we don't need to have our people investing their time in saying the same thing over and over again, but rather start to free them up to be more strategic and more high value. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is where we see organizations building a true digital foundation for scaling their program. And it's technology, but it's also organization design and team structure, and often launching a learning hub or an academy or a learning center where their customers and their external learners as well as their internal learners can come and self-serve, and really building up a catalog where the 80-20 of the most common needs for on-demand have been met in that learning academy, and starting to leverage measuring of learning consumption to understand what's working and what's not, as well as, you know, what of our kind of partner accounts, client accounts are healthy and which aren't, and gleaning that information from the learning programs metrics. And then third is moving into a phase where we see organizations starting to truly personalize learning, but at scale, by understanding the core learner personas in their learner base, in their user base, in their customer base, and starting to build nuanced programs for each persona. So understanding what's the attention span, what's the modality preference, what's the burning problem that this persona truly must solve versus the others, and building for that, you know, and putting that learning in a place where they'll find it in their moments of need, and building up an engagement strategy. So 3 is where we see the dynamic start to shift from it's more of a, if you build it, they will come, to we're actually going to push and pull to make sure people understand what is here and are getting the right learning at the right time to really serve them powerfully. And then phase 4 is about taking everything that you've built and applying it rigorously to expand the impact that it's having on your business. So first, kind of across the customer lifecycle, if you think about it starting with awareness of your brand and starting conversations between folks at your organization and potential customers or partners, and then moving through the partnership process and the onboarding process, and then the mastery process, and retaining those accounts over time and growing those accounts. At each step along the way, there are hard metrics that start to get optimized by your learning offerings and the way that they're deployed. So that's what we see in phase 4. As well as, you know, powerful enablement of internal teams. And then finally, phase 5, which is kind of the few and the proud, is using your learning offerings to truly elevate your brand. And a couple of different facets here. One is we see organizations start to take center stage in their industry as a source of credentialing. Whether or not, you know, you may be a consumer of a company's products, maybe you're going to that company to get credentials in the space and to learn about your profession. 2 is we see organizations pioneering new channels, kind of at the low end, starting to deliver learning more through a social media and influencer-based strategy. At the high end, partnering with academics and delivering coursework to tens of thousands of people potentially. And 3 is really harnessing technology that's at the very avant-garde cutting edge, whether it's deploying augmented reality or machine learning or other capabilities to make that learning program really stand out. And so that's what we see. And so we spent, as I said, a couple of months building this model and have worked with our partners using this model to advise them on, you know, how they might efficiently grow and evolve their programs to get more high impact. And we've also partnered with a market research company called IDC to take a look at the landscape out there way beyond our partner base, and take stock of what does this look like in the world. And what we found was that it was a very small minority of companies, about 17%, that made it to phase 4 or phase 5. But relative to phase 1 and 2, which is the bulk of the companies that they looked at, there was dramatic performance gains that were attained in evolving up through personalization and deliberate business impact and brand elevation, again, across those metrics that organizations' executive teams tend to look at, you know, whether it's CSAT scores or product adoption or speed to onboarding and time to value, and others, retention, expansion, et cetera. We saw these really profound advantages in the numbers and looking out at about 260 organizations through the lens of this model. So, you know, in terms of how we operationally get in and talk about the nuts and bolts to have you do this, we tend to talk about 8 different components of your learning program. And you can see them here. It starts with advocacy and how do you make the case for the resources and the budget and the investments that you need, to discovery of learning needs, to what's the business model of your program, and are you going to be able to achieve the profitability that you need, or are you a cost center to engagement of your learners and how you trigger the right learning that needs to happen at the right time to have the right effect, to the capacity to build and maintain your offering, to measurement, to your technology stack, and to your team itself. And for the remainder of our time, with kind of that setting of the table of the larger strategic context, at least how we think about it, I really want us to turn to measurement, because I think that it's perhaps the most important catalyst for growing beyond the early stages and really getting to scale. And for a couple of reasons, at least from our vantage point. One, I think that as your measurement of learning's impact becomes more sophisticated, it's a very powerful focusing function internally for your team to understand what's working and what isn't, and elevate what's working and scrap or change what isn't. I think when you look across the organization and up into your executive team and your cross-functional leaders, sufficient measurement of learning's impact is what unlocks investment and unlocks political support and unlocks the ability to do larger initiatives to really take your program into the future. And then I think for your partners, for your customers, for your learners, being able to quantify the impact that's possible for them becomes a really powerful motivating instrument in creating new partnerships. And so I think measurement is really important. And then before I turn it over to the kind of the true experts on the line here to talk a little bit about how they think about measurement, I just want to put up a very simple framework that I think probably all of us have somewhere in the back or maybe the forefront of our minds when we think about measuring learning, and it's the Kirkpatrick model, updated by Phillips, which, you know, as probably all of you know, has 5 levels, but I think it's really helpful in our conversations with learning teams to kind of look at those levels and disaggregate, and starting at the bottom, measuring the reaction to the learning. Were the learners satisfied? Do they intend to apply it? And then going up to the learning itself, the learning content. Did I understand the content? Do I remember the content? Can I pass a test around the content? And then 3, behavior. Do I know how to apply it, when to apply it? Do I apply it? Behavior change is level 3. 4, business impact, again, kind of across those hard KPIs of the customer lifecycle, from demand generation through retention and expansion, but also other metrics around employee engagement and things that really matter in the functioning of your business. And then ultimately up to ROI, so the amount that we're investing in learning, are we getting a return? Are we getting a meaningful return on that investment? And so what's really interesting for us in doing this work with programs that are trying to evolve and grow and mature is that we have this conversation. They say level 1 check, level 2 check. You know, they're very strong at measuring level 1 and 2 and benefiting from those metrics. And we ask them where their focus is usually on level 4 and level 5. And they usually tell us that we're struggling to do that to the level that we'd like to really be able to quantify that business impact for our business and for our customers and our partners' organizations. But then when we talk about level 3, it's something that has gotten less attention, or it's something where we hear, well, we don't really have the technology to measure that to the degree that we need to. Or it's something that we need to focus on, but you know, we haven't quite figured out how to crack that code. Some do, but most are still kind of grappling with level 3. And so I think that's kind of the springboard for the rest of the conversation, is to dwell a little bit on level 3. And so how do you engineer learning and deploy learning and measure learning for behavior change? Because it's the behavior change of your learners that's going to deliver that business impact, which ultimately is going to roll up into that ROI. So for the remainder of the time, I'm going to pass the microphone over to my colleagues on the line who are more experts in this to talk a little bit about their experience. And first to Britt, from a learning science perspective and from leading learning programs and designing learning programs from your perspective, to talk a little bit about, you know, how you see the challenge of building for behavioral impact and measuring behavioral impact.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. And I am going to take the con, as they say, and be able to share from my presentation here. So I've done a lot of research on the brain science of lots of things, but my first book, which I've recently updated, is on the brain science of learning and how we work with our biology to bring out the most in people's learning capacity, but it also really gave really clear indications of how we should design learning. And a lot of learning doesn't always match with how the brain learns. So I'm going to give you a few of my brain-based strategies. I have a whole presentation on this, but I'm going to give you a few of them that are relevant to this conversation today. And just so you know, I'm a Thought Industries customer. I certify learning professionals in my training solutions that are all brain science based. And when I was looking for the right platform to house my learning and what I wanted to do with it, I really wanted to make sure it had the features that I know are best practices. So I'm here to talk to you about kind of the science behind it so you can take some of these strategies into your own learning design, but I'll also show you how I use it. I'm going to share some screenshots from my own courses in Thought Industries and also how I'm using Bongo. So if you want to do a deeper dive, check out this book. I have a lot of information in it, but all of what I'm sharing with you is coming from this. And let me just demystify neuroscience. It's really just the study, the ways of our central nervous system, which is your brain and your spinal cord, and then the peripheral nervous system, which is everything else that enlivens your body. And I use that lens to study various things. In this case, what does that tell us about learning? And then from a neuroscience perspective, there's two levels of learning that I care about. One is that the learning solution itself is designed to maximize how the brain takes in information, how we move that into memory, and ultimately how we change behavior, how we shift what people are doing on a daily basis. For me, if we're not changing behavior, we're designing learning that might be popular, but it's not moving the needle on the metrics that matter. So we're really all about behavior change. And then for me, I do leadership development. So I'm always working with senior leaders, managers, and organizations. So I always want my content to give those managers and leaders insights about how to bring out the best in themselves and the people that they lead. So for me, brain science is operating on two levels, and that's something that I weave into my training solutions. Why I love neuroscience is because biology is universal. It cuts across age and background and region and experience. It's something that gives us insights that we can apply in a lot of different settings. And what's really cool is that all learning is a neural pathway. So the thoughts that you think, the actions that you take, it's all neural pathways. And the human body is incredibly adaptive. We can and do form new neural pathways all the way up until the moment of death. So absolutely everyone can learn and change behaviors. So let's jump into behaviors. I like to think about it as habits. We are habit-making machines, and practice plays a really important role. So for those of you that like to geek out on the brain science, the brain structure that does this is the basal ganglia. It's actually a pronged structure that looks like this, and it unites the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. But its job is to turn repeated behaviors into habits. So it pays attention to when you're doing something again and again, and it makes it kind of that autopilot thing you don't have to think about. For example, when you first learn to drive a car, when we're learning something new, there's a lot of energy spent in the prefrontal cortex. The brain burns sugar. It's something that they measure on MRI machines. And when we're concentrating and learning, it's a lot. But if we do that behavior over and over again, the basal ganglia is the structure that kicks in and goes, oh, this is not a good use of our time and energy. Let me turn this into a habit, a low energy package that can kind of run on autopilot. So now, you know, if you think about when you learn to drive, the mirror and the wheel, and for some of us, the clutch, turning, it was a lot. And now you can get to where you're going without even thinking about the act of driving. That is the basal ganglia. And so in learning, I like to think of us as habit designers. We are either instilling new habits or we're changing habits that are already in place into better ones. If you want to learn more about the science of this, I highly recommend the book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. But essentially, all behaviors that we're trying to create have what scientists call a habit loop. There's some kind of cue that tells you to do the behavior. Then you do the routine of actions, words and actions that are the behavior. And then ultimately you get some kind of reward. And that's what then anchors that habit loop. So, you know, getting in the car is the cue, then the routine is all the actions that move the car, and the reward is getting to where you want it to go, or when you were a teenager, freedom, right? The other thing that's really interesting about habits is that repetitions is where it's at. At 20 repetitions, a neural pathway is formed. The magic number is 40 to 50. 40 to 50 repetitions is when the habit kicks in and it becomes autopilot. And this is where we oftentimes don't help people practice enough. We expect them to change their behavior, but if we can help them do it and practice it and get on their way to 40 to 50, we get much more efficacy, not only in developing the right habit, but moving people into that state of comfort. And then interestingly, at 66 habits or repetitions, the neurons actually get thicker and they can measure it on the microscope. They're like a muscle. The more you use them, the thicker they get. So at 66, you can get measurable thickness happening on that neural pathway. I work with a lot of learning organizations and I go in and evaluate their learning strategy. And one of the things I've noticed is that most orgs either don't create enough practice, getting to that 40 to 50 repetitions, or the right kind of practice. So I want to introduce you to the research of Anders Ericsson. He wrote the book Peak, Secrets from the New Science of Expertise. And he found that oftentimes when we roll out, training, we expect people's, skill level to just accelerate. They'll go through training and they'll get better. But really what happens is we have some initial improvement and then things kind of flatten out. And that's because people start doing what's known as mindless practice. They work on it, but they're not really setting themselves some goals for improvement. The real benefit comes when you engage in what's known as deliberate practice, where it's a series of working with a coach or mentor, challenging yourself at the edge of your skill, setting a new specific goal, intense focus on achieving that goal, getting meaningful feedback and fixing your behaviors. So when we think about giving practice to the folks we're trying to train, we also want to set it up in a way that makes it easy for them to start. So I always like to give them the throwaway, create some psychological safety and say, hey, we're going to try something new. You're going to make mistakes. And then we start harvesting the brain's natural way to take what they've done and learn how to get better. So having the improvement round, further honing it and seeing what else we can learn, starting to really groove that habit and start to get in lots of repetitions, and then putting the final polish on where you can start to really fine tune and accelerate the level of performance. So as you're thinking about your own learning journey, you want to think about how do I take people through these stages of practice because they help people get motivated and see the rewards in doing the behavior better. Another thing to think about is what level of mastery are you trying to get them to? I do train the trainer, and people are literally presenting my research in their organization. So I need them to be at expert level. I need them to know how to do that very well. I need them to be able to facilitate a lot of different situations. But in some places, getting someone to novice level is fine. So you want to think about where do I need to get them, and then your learning solution matches that and gives them the repetitions and the structure to get to the level you need them to get to. Lots of ways we can help people practice. There's lots of modalities. So for example, you can use activities like having them do something reflective, engaging in discussion with a learning peer, doing some form of assessment. Those are all activities that activate the brain and are a form of moving the needle. Another type of activity is working on a scenario or a case study, something that is realistic. They think their way through it. They try some solutions. They learn from how that went. Those are really valuable learning tools. So are simulations. And simulations you want to be as lifelike or life-size as possible. This is a simulation for a dental school. And yes, we can do some really fabulous online learning, but ultimately they need to practice working on life-size mouths and teeth. And so for certain industries, you also have to build this into your learning strategy. The good news is we can now leverage VR and XR because the brain codes virtual reality as a lived memory. So you may want to think about if you're actually having to get hands-on skills like dentistry, you can do a lot with VR. There's some cool stuff you can do with avatars where people are engaging in a lifelike scenario, but it's animated either by artificial intelligence or human intelligence, creating those kind of unexpected moments you have to respond to and then get coaching in real time. And then of course, video. Video is amazing. Video is very powerful, and a lot of organizations are using video because it's a great way to harness not only the expertise of some of your top performers, but the brain really responds to visual images. We're wired to learn from each other through observational learning. And so by using video, you can make that part of your learning strategy. Now, why video is so powerful is because we have a mirror neuron system in our bodies, and researchers have discovered that when we watch somebody do something, the same part of our brain is activated. So we get like a little mini practice session in our own brain when we watch somebody else. We're wired for observational learning. This is the purpose of this structure, along with giving us empathy, because we also feel other people's feelings. So one of the things that I want to encourage everyone to do is start to look at how do you bring more observational learning into your learning. This is how we've learned as a species. We learned by watching others. And in addition, our brain is wired for pictures. As a child, we learn what a cat is long before we can say the word cat, and long before we know that the letter C-A-T spell cat. So whenever we work with visual images, we just accelerate the brain's ability to absorb and use that information. And there's no industry where you cannot apply this. So let me share a little bit about what we do in my organization and how I use Thought Industries for training. As I mentioned, I do an online Train the Trainer program. My company is Brain Aware Training, and I take my audience is learning professionals. It would be learning and development people within a company like Domino's Pizza or SHI Computers or Marriott Hotels. And I take them through a learning path when they're learning my content. And so I've built a learning path for the Brain Aware Manager training we have. 6 sessions of content related to skills managers need. My audience is learning that content and getting ready to deliver it to their audience, either in person or virtually. So here's some screenshots from my Thought Industries course. There's the navigation menu on the left-hand side. The content shows up in the center. There's lots of interactive tools. And I build my lessons around kind of taking my learners, my learning professionals who I want to certify, through a journey. So typical thing is they watch me teach the content. We film me delivering it. They get to watch me deliver it. Then they practice using the worksheets where they apply those concepts. They also get to engage with the concepts, and that helps them, boost their knowledge of those materials as well as their retention of them. And then we have a variety of assignments and quizzes to foster that knowledge transfer and retention. And then I have them teach back the material. So they have to actually deliver the material. I watch it, my team watches it, we give them feedback, and I want to groove their repetitions, right? This is our way of doing that. So all of these contribute to them learning the material. I mix it up intentionally so that there's variety here because each of them does something different. We believe, and we have good discussions also because there's community we want to build and they can share knowledge with each other. I use video a lot, so we also make the videos of me teaching the material available for them to embed in their LMS. They can choose to do that and use them as pre-learning or post-learning boosters. And then Thought Industries has a lot of interesting ways to make your content interactive. So there's lots of different page types you can use that will help your learners play with the content in different ways. And I like that we have variety. And then you can also craft a lot of different types of assignments. And so I'm really thoughtful about my assignments. I don't want anyone to feel like it's busy work. I want each assignment to move their goals forward. So everything that they do is getting them ready to deliver the content. And then most importantly is our teach backs. And this is where Bongo comes in. And I'm so excited that Bongo has been added because I immediately converted some of our assignments to this. It's wonderful. So what the student sees is that there is an assignment for them to film themselves delivering 15 minutes of the content, and they can do that right in the platform. And then I get to come in and watch it later. So this person needed to teach back this particular section. She filmed herself within the platform delivering that 15 minutes of content. And what I love is that there's 2 levels of feedback she gets. There's an auto analysis feature that runs based on her video and gives her a score. So before I can get in there and give her additional personal feedback, she gets immediate feedback and sees, you can see it measures clarity of her words, how many filler words she's using, her speaker rate, and if she's saying the key terms that we plugged in there at the right level. So we can plug in a transcript and it will show, they have this phase generation feature that takes all those terms and generates, here's how many times people should be saying this. So she instantly gets feedback. The cool thing is, let's say her score is low, she gets that feedback right away. And what we're seeing is people will then, by choice, record again and upload a better version. So the feedback gives them the opportunity to do that. And we see people improve their performance by saying, oh, I could do better. I'm gonna try this again. And then I'm able to go back and watch that video and also give personalized feedback. And when I start typing, it timestamps it. So I can watch it and just be giving instant feedback as I review, and it's timestamped, and then they can see exactly what I was commenting on at the moment they were saying it. Just a couple more things I want to share with you. My brain aware training, I have woven brain science through all of this as well, because there's a lot of brain science concepts that connect how we are and how we bring out the best in our teams. And I'm really thrilled that we have really great reviews. 95% of the managers who've gone through the training, so this is my clients' customers, their employees, 95% are rating it as excellent, and another 4% are rating it as very good. And we know that it has global impact because my clients have learners all over the world. So that's the stuff I wanted to share with you. If you want to geek out more on the science, again, you might want to pick up the book. You can pick it up at any bookstore or on my website, britandriata.com. And now I'm going to hand the baton over to Emily, and she's going to take you into a deeper dive into Bongo and its wonderful features. Emily, I don't think we can hear you.
Let's see, are you guys hearing me now?
Yes, we are. Hi, Emily.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. So yeah, thank you so much, Britt. And you queued me up so nicely, because everything that you talk about with practice and habits and all of that, and really, watching people do something well and being able to, to do that yourselves, like that's the real proof that you know how to do something. And that's what we strive to do at Bongo. So are you all seeing my the PowerPoint again? Just want to make sure before I go through. Let's see. All right. Okay. So at Bongo, who are we? So I mentioned earlier in the presentation that we are an embedded solution, and we strive to drive skills and development at scale through a combination of practice, like Britt was talking about, demonstration, and feedback. And so we really feel that the only true way to really get an authentic representation of what people can do is to have them demonstrate those skills and apply that knowledge on video. And we do that in a variety of ways. And in Thought Industries, you'll see 3 different workflows that we offer. The first one you saw Britt just show, so that's our individual project. And that's where learners are really going to practice those key skills and go through all of those steps that Britt had mentioned. And I love the way that she had framed it, because, with practice, you do want to turn repeated behaviors into habits, right? But if learners aren't getting the feedback on those repeated behaviors, how do you know that, those are good behaviors? So with Bongo, you're really able to control those behaviors, give that feedback, and make sure that the learners are developing good habits versus bad habits. Once they've gone through all of that practice, they're going to transition into our next workflow, which is what we call question and answer. So that's really where they're going to be put on the spot to really prove the competency of what they've learned. And then finally, we have interactive video. So this is going to take all of the amazing content that you've probably already created, all of the video, but we're going to kind of flip it on its head a little bit. And instead of really just passively watching video content, learners are going to be able to engage in that content and put themselves on video and really put themselves in a situation, analyze it, and prove that they know what they need to know to perform well. All right, so Paul talked about the Kirkpatrick model. We talk about this as well. And so I mentioned, Bongo gives you an authentic assessment of learning and behaviors via video proof. And when you think about learning and learners, they're active, right? They're constantly changing. You're constantly changing what it is that you want them to learn. And so we want them to use their knowledge to adapt to and respond to different scenarios, which is going to really help them move up this ladder and move into more of an experiential learning zone, because that's where behaviors are changed and solidified. And Paul was talking about how that level 3 sometimes gets skipped over, or people don't quite know how to address it. Bongo really fits squarely in here. And so we also at Bongo, we talk about the 70-20-10% model, where 10% of knowledge is acquired from formal learning. That's where learners are going to take advantage of all of the assets you've made available to them. But where we really want to come in is help you drive that 20% learning from others and 70% of learning through experience. So learners are going to move through these levels as they practice and demonstrate their skills. And then, as Britt mentioned, they're going to get feedback on what works and what doesn't work, so we can ensure that those habits turn into changed and better behaviors. And so certification is just one way, one of many ways that you can use Bongo. Britt mentioned she uses it to have her people going through her program do teachbacks. We see that very often. But certification is an interesting way to think about using Bongo as well. And when you think about certification, we've really come a long way from traditional certifications, right? So proctored exams that were traditionally face-to-face with the ways of the world right now, that's a thing of the past, right? And so, and learners, they can hide behind multiple choice tests. Maybe they're guessing. Maybe they, studied real hard the day before, and they have, 1 to 3 day retention period. And then as soon as they take the test, it goes away, right? Being able to put yourself on video, prove your competency, that's true certification. That's a way that you know that your certification can stand for something. And so, we've talked about this a little bit, but, with Bongo, you get asynchronous practice. You also have synchronous practice, which I'll show you in just a moment. But that demonstration and evaluation of desired behaviors is going to allow you and your customers to scale faster and scale broader and give everyone that one-on-one attention that they need to develop. You can provide scenario analysis, and that's really, again, another and better way to prove readiness to apply the knowledge that they've learned. And finally, putting this on video, allowing learners to record their screen as they're going through something. All of your learning materials, they're evergreen, right? Like you can constantly update. You don't have to throw away anything because they're able to do these things live. You can always use the latest version of your product. All right, now I'm going to take you into a demo of Bongo. So now you're going to see my Thought Industries course. So it's going to look similar to what Britt showed you, but this will be branded to your businesses, so it looks a little bit different. On the left-hand side, you'll see all of my courses and assignments, but what you're seeing right now is Bongo. So as mentioned, we are fully embedded. Your learners, your customers are not going to know that they're in another product, because we're not, right? We're fully a part of Thought Industries. And so this is the first assignment type that Britt actually showed you in her presentation. So this is our individual project assignment where learners are going to be able to practice a skill, hone that skill, get into the groove, as Britt calls it, and really be able to build their confidence, because they can record as many videos as they want. They're going to get feedback every single time. And so, they'll be able to see that their skill is improving as they go through the program. So we like to, we're all about video, right? So you have the opportunity to put in video instructions here. And so Britt had a great idea of, why don't you use, showcase some great employees that you already have or that your customers already have, and have employees learn from that experience. So you can put video instructions in here. You can put in, a great presentation, from you or your customer's business in here. And so in this situation, oftentimes Thought Industries customers are working with their partners or customers to just make sure that they're keeping up to date on, on the product, and they know how to demonstrate that value. So here you have the option to record a video. You can choose to do just camera. Most people tend to do camera and a screen. So you can choose the content that you want to share. You can work live and share your desktop, or you can walk through a PowerPoint presentation. You're going to record that. Once you're done, you're going to stop and save it. And it's going to go into this work in progress area. And this is what Britt was showing earlier. So I can do as many takes as I want, and immediately I can see that analysis. So the very first time I go through, I didn't do so hot, right? I was pretty clear, which is great, but had a lot of filler words. Speaking rate was fairly slow, and the key terms that I was supposed to touch on, or phrases, I didn't do that. So I'm going to want to go in and do that again. And this is a great snapshot for your learners. But another way that they can actually analyze their own work is they can go in and they can watch their video again. I'm just going to mute this. And that same auto analysis is available in context with the video presentation. So I can see exactly where my filler words were. Was I not too confident at the 20-second mark? Did I get tripped up? Is that why I was starting to say a lot of ums and ahs and likes? I'm not sure, but this gives me really, really targeted, immediate feedback of how I'm doing on this presentation, where I need to improve. So as you can see, I went in, I tried again, and let's see how I did the second time around. Much, much better, right? And so you have the option to choose which grading type that you want. And if you truly want to scale your program and be hands-off, you can actually have that 96% that I achieved. You can have that go straight to your grade book, and it's already auto-graded for you. Or if you want to do that timestamp feedback, which I'll show you in just a moment, you can do that as well, even if it is auto-graded. So we talk a lot about asynchronous coaching and feedback, and that is definitely what we strive to do at Bongo, because we really want to help you scale your programs without sacrificing the one-on-one feedback and coaching that your learners are going to need. And so a really kind of cool thing about this particular assignment as well, especially because it's meant for practice, you can actually use our web conferencing capabilities and meet, if you're a learner, meet with your manager, meet with your coach, meet with Britt if you're so lucky, and do your presentation live, get that feedback, and then apply it in your next practice, in your next go around. So I'm just showing you what that experience looks like right now. Obviously, it'll just be me in here, but I could send out this link. Anyone else can join. I can use a whiteboard if I want to, or I could share my screen, upload a presentation. I could even record this and submit this as my submission to be graded. So I just wanted to show you that, while most of what I'm showing you is asynchronous, there is the ability to have that synchronous coaching as well. And so once I've decided that, this is what I want to submit, I'm going to go through and I can choose to give myself feedback if I want to. But this experience is going to be identical to what you as the manager or evaluator, subject matter expert are going to see on the grading page. So again, you'll be able to see that auto analysis. So you'll be able to see that score. And as I start the video, let me just mute this, and I can choose to view it however I want. I can make it big. As soon as I start typing, you'll see, unfortunate pause here, but you'll see that the video pauses. And as soon as I click enter, the video is going to continue. So I, as the learner, when I go back in, if I want to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do, improving where I need to improve, I get that time-stamped feedback. And as so many companies are, used to do training live, are moving online, even if you're watching a live presentation in a room with someone, it's not likely that you're going to interrupt them every 15 seconds to give feedback, right? And so by the time they get back to the end of their presentation, you've probably forgotten half the things that you want to say. And so this is a really, really great way to capture that information. You can also do preset comments in here if you find yourself saying the same thing over and over. So this timestamped feedback is available for every single assignment type, no matter if you have the assignment auto-graded or not. We always want to give the opportunity for a feedback loop. All right, so the learners have gone through, they've really practiced. They've turned those behaviors into good behaviors, and they've gotten that feedback and coaching. Now they're going to really, prove that they can do this on the spot without the comfort of a practice area. And so this is what we call our Q&A assignment, question and answer. And with this assignment, and along with all the other assignments as well, while many people do auto grading, a lot of our customers also use a rubric. And especially if you have multiple managers who are having their employees go through a similar program, this really ensures that everyone is graded on a fair scale. There's benchmarks that you can put into place. And we believe that if a rubric is being used, that should be made available to the learner right at the onset, so they know exactly what they need to do to perform well. So unlike the first assignment, which is all about practice, again, this assignment's all about application. So it's time to test your knowledge. This one typically is used for having difficult conversations, right? So whether you're a sales rep and you're overcoming price objections, whether you're in a leadership role and you have to have a performance review conversation with your employee, you're in a call center and you are talking to customers and helping them navigate through a system, or they're upset about a bill or whatever it may be. This is really a great way to prove your competency. So I'm going to activate my recorder, and you'll notice that I don't know what the actual question is until I click Start Question.
Your product is quite robust. Tell me how it's different than your top competitors.
And you'll notice that the recording, I have a countdown from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is giving me a couple seconds to kind of collect my thoughts before I click go. And then you can set a minimum and a maximum. So, since this is meant to mirror role play, you don't want people talking for 20 minutes, right? So you can say max time is a minute, minimum time is 15 seconds. We're running out of time here, so this is just a really, really great way, again, for your learners to prove their competency. You can also do screen share on this assignment as well. So that's utilized a lot too. And this one, again, is going to have auto analysis available with it. So you can have it auto graded. You could see that automatic feedback and coaching as well. The final assignment type is what we call interactive video. So again, this is where you're going to take that great content that you've probably already created, and you're going to, instead of, you creating all of the content, you'll see in the first two assignments, it's actually flipped on the learner, and the learner is actually creating the content. Here, you're going to be able to use the content that you already have, but have the learners better engage with it.
In interactive video, individuals answer questions that.
So the nice thing about this one is you obviously have full control. You could set up the question, if it's right or wrong, and also determine the feedback that people get. So if I get the question wrong, it's going to tell me I'm incorrect, and I can retry it, and it's going to rewind the video for me. Once I do get it right, I can go forward.
Video, individuals answer questions that.
So we'll just say, yes, you again can have robust or, as little feedback as you want.
Throughout a video, but this activity tests more than just.
And here is where the learner will have the opportunity to actually respond to the video. What would you do? What went right? What went wrong in this scenario? And so here, again, it's just a better way for you to measure behaviors and prove competency. So I know we have 5 minutes left to spare. I quickly went through all of the assignment types, but I hope that you were able to see that, just going off of what Paul was saying and Britt was saying, really we tie in exactly into the Thought Industries platform and what they're trying to accomplish, and making sure that learners are, not just setting and forgetting it, but they're really retaining that information and are able to apply it and improve in whatever job they're doing. All right.
All right. Well, thank you, Britt, and thank you, Emily. I love that you both shared. And Emily, the learning designer within me gets so jealous when I see some of the capabilities that Bongo puts in your hands, and wish that I had had those in a past life. But I just think they're awesome. So for these last few minutes of Q&A, a couple of questions have come in, and I'll just take us through them. The first one is taking us back to that 5 stages of customer learning maturity and the evolution journey. The question is there a reason you wouldn't want to continue to offer level 1 training, aka live training, even when you're at level 5? And it's such an insightful question, because we talked a little bit about the sequential nature of organizations mastering those phases, but I didn't get into kind of the continuous synchronous harmony that happens, because you're absolutely right. It's not that live training ever goes away, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person. And it's not that you ever stop mastering that live training and the blend between what's live and what's on demand. And that's true kind of across those 5 stages. So if you think about your live training, what is that foundation per scale given where you're going? And then the personalization strategy at scale, and the using all of those offerings to deliver business impact and ultimately elevate the brand. I think that's something where it's healthy to pull up periodically and say, are there any of these where we really need to push? And that very well could be one that you've already kind of come through. So great question. Next question is around Bongo, and do you need to have a Bongo license in order to use TI? Emily, do you want to speak to how the licensing works?
Yeah, sure. So we, as I mentioned, we are fully embedded. So if you're a Thought Industries customer and you want to use Bongo, it's all a one-stop shop for you.
That's great. Other questions from the audience? All right, well, if not, I'm happy to give you all a few minutes back. And thank you for joining us and being our audience today. As we mentioned, we do have a bonus for everyone, actually 2 bonuses if you move ahead 1 slide. The first is we're gonna send you a white paper that we produced that goes a lot more in depth into that research around customer learning maturity. So a lot of actionable tactics in there that hopefully are valuable to you, and always happy to go deeper if you want to discuss after reviewing. So just let us know on that. And then second is all of the audience members are entered into a raffle for a free copy of the Customer Education Playbook, which, as you may know, is a new book that was just released through Wiley, authored by Daniel Quick, the head of learning strategies here at Thought Industries, in conjunction with Barry Kelly, who is our CEO. And it's just an incredible book based on decades of experience of doing this work with companies and organizations, and really takes you through a tactical blueprint of how do you build and grow these programs and what are the best practices. It's a really rich resource for all of you with that. So we'll let you know if you've won. And with that, I'll just say again, thank you, and we really appreciate your time, and it's a pleasure to connect with all of you virtually, and hopefully we'll see you again soon for another one of these community sessions.